Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing? Good. We are so happy to see all of you tonight. Thank you for joining us for our first in-person gala in 3 years. Applause! Yay! Isn't that wonderful? We're back together again. If there is one thing that we have all learned over the past 3 years while we were apart, it was how to improvise. Maybe that meant figuring out how to turn your dining room or your bedroom or maybe even your bathroom, because it was the only room with a lock on the door, into your office. Maybe you had to learn how to teach 7th grade math or 9th grade science. Whatever you had to do, you did it and made the best of it, right? Yeah. Well, in that same vein, we are improvising tonight. By now, I am sure you have noticed that I am not Raynell Moon. Some of you were probably sitting in your seats saying, wow, Raynell sure has gotten older since the last time we saw her. And that's because I am a lot older than Raynell. But Raynell is not here tonight. My name is Barbara Rogers. And over the past 24 hours, I had to improvise because Raynell called me late last night. She had a family emergency. And because she's one of my sister friends, she said, please, could you fill in for me? So here I am. So be kind, okay? As we celebrate the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of San Francisco Bay Area, many people just call it LCCR or LCCRSF. We are halfway through Black History Month and Black Futures Month. We find ourselves celebrating Black joy, Black resilience, the foundational contributions Black individuals and culture have made to this nation, and we are also, unfortunately, in mourning. Too many times we've been in mourning, and most recently for Tyre Nichols, one of the latest in a long line of Black people who have been killed at the hands of police. Tonight, we hold the urgency of the changes we demand, and we come together as a community to dream and to build a future where Black people and all people are free, and where each of us has the rights that we not only deserve, but that we have earned. Yeah, you have earned it with a lot of hard work. I am told we have a packed house tonight that is almost 700 people. Yeah, all of you here to support the cause, and it is my honor to be with you tonight. As always, during this event, the Lawyers Committee lifts up the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tonight, we recognize the value of service and community, and also the systemic wrongs that we are using to build a better future. And how appropriate that we channel Dr. King's legacy right now. In particular, we have continuing strife, unfortunately, continuing state brutality. We have systemic racism, and not only in what we are doing every day in policing, but also in the COVID response. We just saw that in the disproportionate response for people of color. And we also still have, unfortunately, racism and more punitive immigration system, and a more punitive immigration system, and in intensifying attacks on critical race theory, affirmative action, and voting. And I must tell you that we even have had attacks this year on Black History Month. I cannot believe it, but there was a story just a couple of weeks ago in Alabama where the students at a high school had planned a Black History Month celebration. They were told they couldn't do it. They protested, and so they said, okay, you can do it, but you can't talk about anything that happened before 1970. Whatever. What kind of History Month is that? Tonight, we'll be channeling the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Now more than ever, we see so clearly that his life teaches us, these 50 plus years after his death, the importance of love being at the center of any vision for justice. And as there are so many out there who try to divide us, we must remember that we are all in this together, that we rise and fall together. Yeah, you can applaud that because you're helping to make that happen. Our thanks tonight to all those on the front lines working for and with the Lawyers Committee. Let's give them all applause and applaud yourselves. This evening you will be inspired by remarks from Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, whose work was foundational. Yes, you can applaud. Her work was foundational to developing intersectionality and critical race theory, and who has spent her life teaching and applying their concepts to advance civil rights and shape policy affecting the lives of the most marginalized in our society. Dr. Crenshaw is our Keynote Award recipient for her profound contributions to civil rights and social justice. We will, of course, have a chance to enjoy a wonderful meal together. Thank you to those who prepared and are serving tonight's meal. Let's show them our appreciation with a big round of applause. For 36 years, this Lawyers Committee MLK event has started with the Black National Anthem. We recognize the centrality of the Black experience in resistance to injustice. We recognize that our nation must account for its long history of racialized exploitation and inequality. This anthem honors inclusive democracy. Now, let's welcome the talented students from the Oakland School of the Arts to carry on this tradition. And as they sing, and as they come up to sing, please stand with them in solidarity.
Let's give one more round of applause to these very talented young people. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Wexler, and I am truly honored to be the board chair of this extraordinary organization. We're here tonight to celebrate everyone who's standing with LCCRSF to fight for social justice. Tonight, we celebrate courageous clients, the staff, and pro bono and community partners. Thank you to all of our sponsors. A special thank you to our honorary circle sponsors, Wilson Sonsini, Morrison Foerster, and Pillsbury. We greatly appreciate your support, which helps us immensely with this important work. Please keep an eye on the slideshow throughout the evening to see all of our sponsors who have made this event so special. I'd like to recognize the following judges, elected officials, and community leaders who are here with us tonight. We have a number of Superior Court judges, the Honorable Michael Bagert, the Honorable Raj Chatterjee, the Honorable A. Marissa Chun, the Honorable Charles Crompton, and the Honorable Patrick S. Thompson. We have Immigration Judge Isla Dice and the Honorable Trina L. Thompson of the Northern District of California. We also have San Francisco Public Defender Manohar Raju, Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price, the first Black woman elected to the office since 1853. Stella Greiler, representative from the office of Assemblymember Buffy Wicks. Council Member Latika Malkani. And Reverend Wanda Johnson, the mother of Oscar Grant and CEO and founder of the Oscar Grant Foundation. We are honored to have you all here with us, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of all communities. Thank you also to our coalition partners who join us in our direct service, policy advocacy, and impact litigation work. Every year, the Lawyers Committee mobilizes over 1,000 pro bono attorneys. We thank you for being part of this movement, firmly committed to civil rights. This work is not possible without our clients, who we honor for your courage and confidence in trusting us to serve you. I also want to thank the staff and fellows of the Lawyers Committee for your hard work and dedication to this organization's mission. I ask them to please stand. You are the heart and backbone of this organization, working day in, day out, fighting in the trenches to lift our communities and sustaining that optimistic vision for what's possible despite the daily challenges. Let's give the staff another big round of applause. We also have with us tonight former staff, law clerks, and board members. We continue to build on the foundation you laid before us. And I want to thank my fellow board members who are with us tonight. If you're a board member, please raise your hand. I am honored to serve with all of you. So this evening, we're raising funds for a pillar of the organization, the Thurgood Marshall Fellowship. We're hoping to raise $30,000 tonight, and I ask for your help. This community launched the fellowship to invest in early career attorneys. It offers them mentorship and experience in civil rights practice and advocacy, and bolsters this movement for the future. As you're moved during the program tonight, please give in support. And now we'll break for 30 minutes. Please enjoy the company and conversation at your tables, and thank you once again.
For over 50 years, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area has worked to dismantle systems of racism and oppression and build a more equitable and just society for all.
We do direct services, we work on policy, we do impact litigation, we use the media, and we bring all of those tools to bear to create the change that our communities want and need. Each of us is a whole person, and for our communities to be whole, we have to face down multiple systems of injustice.
In our racial justice practice group, we believe that cases cannot be successful unless they are intimately grounded in community work.
I witnessed a mob of people coming over from the Capitol, and there was a black woman who had a pride flag waving, and she was immediately just engulfed by these January 6th protesters in full view of law enforcement, and they actually started literally jumping her. Law enforcement violently arrested the woman who had been beat up, and they grabbed me and threw me. I had bruises all up and down my arm, and I didn't see any sort of violence like that happen to any of the men that were actually attacking this woman.
Why we selected Meg as a plaintiff in this case was because of her strong ties in the community and her deep love for the community itself.
After going through so many different avenues, trying to deal with local politicians, trying to work with different community organizations, trying to work with law enforcement, it seemed like the really only other option was to get some sort of legal action involved in an attempt to help actually motivate the folks that are in charge to change.
One of the goals of this case is to eradicate violent policing at protests altogether. And we're hoping that with our community partners, we're able to create a template moving forward on the appropriate way for a government to show up when people are asking to be heard.
Partnerships with civil rights groups and attorneys, and LCCR in particular, are really the only protection that a lot of us here on the streets have to provide any sort of accountability towards law enforcement.
There's a reason why we have to fight so hard to protect First Amendment rights. And that's because every major point in the history of our country where we've seen progress has been a result of people speaking out and demanding to be heard from their government.
We saw massive caseloads where Black and brown folks were being disproportionately incarcerated in a crisis of over 20 years. And in response to that, the courts go into budgetary crisis, and they use a system of fines and fees to raise funds from the people who can least afford it to pay for the state's problematic criminalization policies.
This year we worked together with LCCR SF, Bay Area Legal Aid, and the ACLU of Northern California to file a lawsuit to enjoin and declare unlawful the court's civil assessment program.
What the civil assessment is it's a late fee that goes on the back end of any traffic ticket if you missed your first appearance or payment deadline. And what it does is it usually balloons the cost of a traffic ticket in California, which is already some of the highest in the country.
It actually creates an unconstitutional conflict of interest, as we alleged in our lawsuit, because the courts that are receiving the money are also deciding how much to impose.
One of our clients was experiencing an eviction at the time he was asked to pay $800 in late fees on his traffic tickets for tickets he didn't even know he had.
It essentially means that you are having the poorest people in the state of California finance the court system that benefits everybody.
We've already achieved a huge victory in this case. San Mateo Superior Court announced a policy ending their civil assessments program.
Less than a month after we filed our amended complaint, the California legislature passed a bill called AB 199. That bill reduced the maximum civil assessment from $300 down to $100. It also wiped out all outstanding civil assessment debt all over the state of California, which was a tremendous victory and huge, meaningful change for people that are affected by this debt.
In many ways, this case tells the story of how LCCRSF does its work, which is to connect with the community, understand a problem, and then connect with great attorneys at law firms to do pro bono work to really match that need with the outcomes that we're aiming for.
Our Legal Services for Entrepreneurs team has been partnering with Seven Hills Law Firm to support our legal clinics.
They invite people from the community, people who want to start their own business, who may not have the resources, who may not have a lawyer in their corner, to come to these workshops and participate with an attorney. And that gap that needs to be bridged is primarily due to language, financial resources, and being able to identify culturally with potentially an attorney.
Anwar has been exceptional in working with our Spanish-speaking clients. It really helps build the trust with our clients, and he also was able to be there in person for our clients, which I think just shows his presence in the community.
My family came here. My mom was a single mom at the time when we came, and there were people who believed in me as well, and there were people who were able to help me. And I want to be able to serve people in the way that I was served. That is how we create a better world for future generations on any level.
It really helps small business owners establish their business. And I think that's a really big first step for building generational wealth for our communities, especially the communities of color.
Oftentimes, the clients that we represent are living with severe mental health conditions that are part and parcel of their asylum case, and that also affect them day to day in their ability to advocate for themselves, for their family members, and to be partners in the work that we do with them.
We don't care if you're uninsured. We don't care if you're undocumented. Our goal is to provide services to everybody who lives in our community. As primary care providers, we have that half hour with a patient, with the family, right? And it's what happens to that family the rest of the 23 hours that impacts and molds their lives.
We've seen in the asylum program that when someone has their basic human rights and needs being met, that it's housing and food and health care, it is much more likely that they are able to advocate for themselves at a higher level.
Understanding that healthcare should be available to all, that it should not be a privilege. It's what's driven me, it's what drives the mission of the organization. Making a difference at that level is so important.
I began working early this year with a family that had sought asylum from Ecuador. The mother of this family suffered from extreme post-traumatic stress disorder, and I could see that there were many signs of the difficulty in her telling her story, which was so essential to her winning her case. So we immediately connected with local healthcare providers to provide her a really, really detailed psychological evaluation. We ultimately won that case on the strength of just the written record alone, her story of what she had experienced.
For indigent asylum seekers who are literally facing life and death in immigration court, they may be doing so in a system that is unfamiliar to them, in a language that they don't speak, and with very little resources or sophistication to be able to navigate those processes.
One of the matters that we handled in partnership with LCCR was for a gay man from Mexico who also had AIDS. He suffered horrific abuses in Mexico because of his sexual orientation. After several attempts, he managed to make it into the United States, where he knew nobody, he had no resources, he had no family.
Arnold and Porter is such a great pro bono partner because in all of the cases that we've placed with them, they bring not only their legal skills and the resources of their firm, but their humanity and their compassion in their work with the clients.
Being with him after he was granted asylum and just being able to see that he was going to be able to live a real life in the United States. It's really that moment that makes it all worth it.
With the support of the private bar, this year alone, we've been able to secure asylum for over 70 individuals, which would never be possible if we were left to our own resources.
You're seeing a real tangible impact on somebody's life in a way that you don't necessarily get when you're working on a corporate matter. And it's real, it's immediate, and it's an experience that I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights is an organization where you can get involved in cases that speak to your heart.
The work of protecting the fundamental rights of our brothers and sisters from all different nations is the greatest calling that I can imagine and the greatest application of the skills and resources that my degree and my license can afford.
It's cases like this where we're able to tell a narrative that's driven by the community with nuance, where we actually get to the center of what racial justice really looks like, which is people feeling safe and joyous in their own communities and having autonomy to determine their own futures.
What's possible in the future depends on our partnerships. When we have pro bono help, when we increase who is involved in the movement, we change what's possible. We change the future of our community.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage this year's fantastic awardees. Let's give them a round of applause. The first award, the Jack W. London Award, is presented for exemplary determinations and litigation efforts that protect and advance the civil rights of marginalized communities. It is my absolute honor to recognize Meg White for her outstanding, dynamic, and thoughtful leadership in Sacramento with Justice United individuals and communities everywhere and beyond. We also honor Meg. Woo! We also honor Meg for her courage and leadership as lead plaintiff in the lawsuit challenging the Sacramento Police Department. Thank you so much. The Ketta Taylor Kobe Award recognizes a pro bono partner who provides outstanding representation to address the civil consequences of individuals affected by the criminal justice system. And this year's award goes to Fenwick and West, with Samuel Sahagian, Claire Mina, and Eric Balk accepting on behalf of the entire team. And tonight, we are thrilled to announce not only did our legislative work with the Debt-Free Justice Coalition reduce the fee, but Fenwick has helped resolve this litigation, winning statewide policy, bringing the total amount of discriminatory debt discharged to $1 billion. Get a big round of applause. The James T. Kalishu Award, recognizing extraordinary pro bono contributions to the Legal Services for Entrepreneurs program, goes to the Seven Hills Law Firm, with special recognition of Anwar Ramirez Medina for his dedicated leadership to small businesses and for building trust and access with Spanish-speaking clients. The Anthony F. Logan Award, recognizing the outstanding contributions of a community partner, goes to La Clínica de la Raza, with special recognition to Jane Garcia for their invaluable role in supporting the health of immigrants during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. And finally, I'm thrilled to present the Father Cucalan Moriarty Award to Advancing Immigrant Justice through Outstanding Pro Bono Services to Arnold and Porter for their creative legal arguments based on humanitarian relief, resulting in winning asylum for a family of 6. Thank you to David Barnes and Zachary Fain for accepting on behalf of the entire team. Just one more big round of applause for all the award recipients. And with that, we can all return back to our tables. And I'm thrilled to introduce former board chair and board member Kari Tillery for the next segment of our program.
Thanks, Alika. Good evening, friends. Thank you all for coming out. It's really, really great to see everybody. I've seen lots of friends I haven't seen for years. I'm here tonight to make a very personal ask of each of you to support a tradition of this organization, the Thurgood Marshall Fellowship. This community created and has supported this fellowship year after year. The fellowship provides training, a training ground for visionary new lawyers in the civil rights field, and fuels the type of creative litigation and advocacy that you've been hearing about all night. As a former fellow, I can speak to the personal experience. I can speak from personal experience about the fellowship's power to shape futures. So I ask that you make a donation tonight to help us fund the 2023 fellowship, which will expand the Lawyers Committee's racial justice docket and the issues it's able to address in the next year. The incoming fellow will work on policing, which couldn't be more timely, from running the People's Clinic to impact litigation to policy work. Thurgood Marshall Fellows are visionary, imagining a world we want to live in and creatively using all the tools and advocacy at their disposal to get us there. Last year, in 2022, killings by the police were at a historic high. It is clear as ever that white supremacy and systematic racism will not be dismantled without sustained commitment. It's essential that we take assertive action in our personal lives and also invest in our leaders who will see this work through to the end. But this work can't get done without your support, and that means money, okay? Thank you. You have donation cards at your seat with various options on how to donate. Please take a moment to locate the cards on your table right now. Our goal here is to raise $30,000 to support the Thurgood Marshall Fellow for 2023. So please, if you have a number in mind, double it. Triple it if you can. Give what you can. It matters. So please donate now and encourage everyone at your table to donate as well. I'm going to stand up here for 3 whole minutes while you do it. I know there are a lot of rich law firm partners out there too who could really, really help out here. Don't be shy. The sooner you donate, the better you're going to feel. Break it out, break it out. I think we have Latifah Simon, the wonderful former executive director of the Lawyers Committee, wants to let me know how much she's donating.
I am not rich.
Can anyone match 25? I will match your $2,500. Anybody else? Anybody else want to feel really good and get a big round of applause? Woo! Got real quiet in here. All right, well, give what you can. I know everyone can't give $2,500, but give what you can. Thank you so much for your generosity. We'll share an update on how much we raise tonight at the end of tonight's program. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Kari and Alika. And I have my card. I'm going to fill it out. But Latifa, I don't have $2,500, but I'm going to put something good on it. All right. And now for our final award of the evening, our Keynote Living the Dream Award. This special keynote distinction is given to individuals who not only carry forward the activism and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but who expand and fuel social justice movements through their unique contributions and envision a radical future of liberation and paths to get there. And part of the grease for that path is your money, so be sure to be generous. Here to introduce this year's incredibly special awardee is Deputy and Legal Director Elisa Piana.
Hi, everyone. I think this is my 12th Lawyers Committee luncheon or gala. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I know I'm not the highest number here. And it is an absolute honor to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, the Lawyers Committee's 2023 Living the Dream Award recipient. Dr. Crenshaw is a pioneering scholar and writer on civil rights, critical race theory, Black feminist legal theory, race, racism, and the law. She's co-founder and executive director of AAPF and the faculty director of the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies, as well as the Isidore and Seville Sulzbacher Professor of Law at Columbia Law School and the Promise Institute Chair on Human Rights at UCLA Law School. It doesn't stop there. She was voted one of the 10 most important thinkers in the world by Prospect Magazine. She won the 2021 AALS Triennial Award for Lifetime Service to Legal Education. She pioneered the development of critical race theory. Under her visionary leadership and as an attorney and a scholar, intersectionality has become a household term. And our understanding of civil rights has expanded to include gender equality and economic equality. Dr. Crenshaw has helped set the policy for the Black Lives Matter era and brought new attention to police violence against Black women and girls through the Say Her Name campaign. In recent weeks, she's done teach-ins and critical analysis of the national attacks on education and Black history. Dr. Crenshaw has given generations of public interest lawyers and social justice advocates the intersectional framework to understand and dismantle systemic racism. On a personal note, it's hard to say just how much it means to Lawyers Committee staff to have Dr. Crenshaw here in person to accept this award. I grew up in Utah in a religion where racism and misogyny and homophobia were baked into my everyday experience. And when I arrived at Berkeley Law at age 21, with a lot of learning to do, I encountered Dr. Crenshaw's work in Professor Angela Harris's class, and it changed the way I saw the world. Every person I've talked to has a different, powerful experience with her words. At a time when we all have more learning to do, so much change to create, where when attacks on critical race theory and Black and brown people abound, we are so grateful for Dr. Crenshaw's innovation and leadership. Thank you, Dr. Crenshaw, for honoring us by being here to accept this award and share remarks. We work on a path that you forged. Dr. Crenshaw.
you for those kind remarks. It's such a pleasure to be here and to see all you and, to come out for the first time in 3 years. This is actually only the second public event I've come to as well, so we're coming out together. I'm going to have to put these on. I keep telling myself I don't have to, but it's true. No, that's not working either. Okay. So I am incredibly grateful to be given this honor from an organization that I admire so much, that has advanced the cause of civil rights and equity for over 50 years. Thank you, Elika, Mark, and everyone who made it possible for me to be here. Thank you, the board. Thank you, everyone. I'm especially moved to recall that it was my partnership with Latifah Simon and my former student, Priscilla Ochin, and several others who engaged in conversations about the ways that Black women and girls were marginalized in surveillance and mass incarceration movement building. It was a critical inquiry that started right here in the offices not far from here that grounds so much of the work that AAPF does today. That work that started in those conversations has become Black Girls Matter. It has become Say Her Name. It has become part of movements that begin as efforts to see, to name, and to address gaps in our daily movement practices. This is intersectionality in action, acknowledging that our movements, although often well-intentioned, often leave out key dimensions of the social problems we're facing, in part because our imagination is limited to the ways that more visible members of the groups experience the problem. Police violence, mass incarceration, disciplinary policies and practices have often been imagined as exclusively male problems. But as Black Girls Matter and Say Her Name uncovered, there are particular ways that structures place Black women and girls in harm's way. These insights echo the other ways that intersectionality broadens social justice advocacy, such as in the struggle against violence against women, where initially the needs of women of color were sometimes elided to their peril. Mapping the Margins, an article I wrote about the domestic violence and rape crisis movement, gave testimony to the need for intersectional prisms to better see and understand how to shape our liberatory practices. And it has been central not only to deepening commitments to anti-racism and to feminism, but also in uplifting intersectional vulnerabilities that are often overlooked in the fights for LGBTQ rights, for people with disabilities, undocumented people, those living in poverty, even when working multiple jobs, among the many more applications. Intersectionality, like critical race theory, isn't a thing. It is a way of viewing things, to see better so we can do better. But there is a faction in this country that doesn't want us to do better. And that's why they're attacking tools and knowledge that have come from a whole generation of activism and liberatory practices that have come out of the course of our struggles. And that is probably one of the reasons that the concept of intersectionality has been targeted by the extremist right. Intersectionality makes real Dr. King's poignant observation that our destinies are linked. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, he said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Intersectionality provides the prism to see these interconnections. And that's why the anti-equity faction is trying their best to defame it and using Dr. King's legacy to do so. But as I wrote last year in the LA Times during the Martin Luther King commemoration, Dr. King was, in fact, a critical race theorist before there was a name for it. Dr. King understood that the promise of liberation extends beyond the elimination of formal segregation and individual level bias. Dr. King understood that inequality was not merely a matter of prejudiced people, but of damaged institutions that had not been repaired, and that all of us were harmed in various ways by our collective failures to grapple with these realities. He understood that inequality was structural and that unjust laws help to sustain that inequality. That, in essence, is exactly what CRT is. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. King calls on us to do better, to see through the lens of our common humanity. Intersectionality provides that conceptual prism for us to do so. And perhaps this is the reason that, under pressure from Governor DeSantis in the spate of anti-woke laws, the College Board has scrubbed all mention of the letter from a Birmingham jail and all mention of mapping the margins from the framework for its new AP African American Studies course. Key concepts and movements such as Black feminism, queer theory, Black Lives Matter, reparations, the new Jim Crow were either erased altogether or made optional topics. In short, the revised course would be about the Black past, the ancient past, one decidedly disconnected from contemporary social movements and theories that bridge the past to our present. All of the learning objectives related to structural racism and intersectionality have been eliminated, as well as certain course goals, such as those instructing students to assess real-world problems, and the goal to evaluate the past, the present, and the future, implications of major social movements. Those were goals, they have been scrubbed out. Now, for those of you who've been following anti-woke laws that have spread throughout the country, this perhaps comes as no particular surprise. Currently, these so-called anti-divisive concept laws have been introduced in 43 states. They've been passed in 20 states. 20 explicitly name critical race theory. What has been framed as anti-wokeness, in fact, is a very old idea that has been gestating in extremist circles for generations. That is, that equal rights, diversity, and inclusion are racially discriminatory, preferential treatment, anti-white. This notion that anti-racist thought threatens to harm white people is really at the core of these laws, the idea that anti-racism is anti-white. We heard that during Reconstruction after the passage of the Civil Rights Law. We heard it during Redemption when the suppression of Black voting, Black education, and Black testimony ushered in 7 decades of racial tyranny. We heard it during the era of massive resistance that followed the historic Brown versus Board of Education decision. And we're hearing it now again. And we've seen it on billboards in select communities throughout the South as a slogan and a project of the far right dedicated to exposing a white genocide project. Now, what's bone-chilling is that this concept that anti-racism is anti-white, that diversity is about white replacement theory, has now become normalized. It has become one that actually lives at the very heart of the mainstream political campaign. It's not just Governor DeSantis, and it's not just those on the far right anymore. But what happened between Governor DeSantis and the College Board should be alarming for another reason. The College Board's dance with DeSantis provides us with clear evidence that our mainstream institutions are far from capable of standing up to the kinds of policies that are undermining our democracy and bringing us to the brink of fascism. Extremist ideology has informed educational policy in Florida and in other states, forcing institutions that need and want to do business there to make a choice: concede and appease, or stand up to censorship, even if it means the loss of a valuable market. Despite claims to the contrary, we know that some of the choices made by the College Board were driven by anti-woke ideology. Take, for example, intersectionality, the reason it was removed. A College Board official officially admitted on the record to the New York Times that intersectionality was cut because, quote, it is basically drained of its meaning and filled with political rhetoric, unquote. Of course, intersectionality is not drained of its meaning for the millions of people around the world who use it to make sense out of their lives. Yet a concerted campaign to distort and demolish transformative ideas can win the day when mainstream institutions normalize it and abide by the lowest common denominator. This is truly what's frightening about this moment. As Jason Stanley warned us earlier this week in The Guardian, to name this as a culture war is a misnomer. Banning books is not a culture war. As much as we might not like to say it, it's fascism. So, what does this mean to me and to us tonight? Well, for me, it means I sure am happy that the College Board plays no role in your decision to select the recipient of the 2023 Living the Dream Award. Clearly, I wouldn't be standing here or anywhere else, so I thank the universe for that. It also means that in various ways, we all will have to face what we're willing to sacrifice to resist this ugly and damaging turn in our nation's politics. There will be more as politician after politician seeks to out-Trump Trumpism. And with the power of the state purse and the organs of government at their disposal, this faction can exact costs that many of our institutions have not had to pay in a generation. We can't forget in this moment that segregation itself was propped up by business and other economic interests unwilling to break with racist norms and practices. It was only when our interests aligned with the segregationist hold on mainstream institutions that allowed that hold to be broken. Then we were able to claim any sort of freedom. That time has come back with a vengeance, and the question for us now is, are we ready to fight? Will we be ready to fight to preserve diversity, equity, and inclusion when anti-wokeness comes to our law firms, our corporations, and our businesses? Will we be ready to fight to protect the inclusion of students of color if and when affirmative action is hollowed out of existence? Will we be ready to fight when they come for our books, our teachers, and our writers? Will we be ready to fight when our colleagues and our neighbors tell us it's better to go along to get along than to fight against groupthink? Will you stand up when some say it's time to eliminate the naysayers who resist the coercive silencing that's essential to the myth that underwrites the demand to make America great again? With the events of the past few weeks, I am not sure. With the events over the last few years, I can't tell you what we're prepared to do, how much we are willing to fight. I feel like we're bending that arc of the moral universe that Martin Luther King talked about. But I feel like we're bending in a different direction, maybe back to 1876, than to that multiracial promised land. Now, Du Bois was right to say that the challenge of the 20th century was the challenge of the color line. Its descendant is the challenge of the colorblind. So we can and should do more together to bring our overlapping constituencies to protect his legacy, this legacy of 70 years. At minimum, we've got to be about defending our teachers in the trenches, academic freedom in higher education, demanding real reporting in our editorial desks, real accountability in our boardrooms, real history in our classrooms, and sustained actions to democratize our institutions. If we blink in the face of what we are confronting now, give into the ambivalence grounded in our discomfort about some of these topics, we will leave it to another generation to solve the unfinished business with fewer tools at their disposal to do so. King implored that we put our bodies on the line to face organized forces of reaction in his day, and it's clear that he'd be fighting shoulder to shoulder with us, all of us here tonight, to protect the right to equal education, the right to vote freely, to speak, to read, and to learn. When anti-racism is under attack, our democracy is also under attack. Thank you so much for this award.